Hey, what's going on, sports card fans? This is Ray here from Philly, and I'm joined by my co-host Mike from the YouTube channel This Baseball Card Life. Mike, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great.
Well, welcome to another episode of Sports Card Talk. This is episode number 10 for us, and we're glad you've been along with the ride with us here. Tonight, we have a very special guest with us tonight. This gentleman here is a host of the Great American Sports Collectible Show presented by PSA and the National Sports Collectors Convention. He's also an author of many award-winning books that we're going to go through tonight. And I want to introduce not only a very special guest, but I consider a friend of mine, Mr. Tom Zappala. Tom, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey Ray, how you doing? Mike, how you guys
No.
doing? Thanks for having me. Looking forward to just relaxing and chatting.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for joining with us tonight.
Not a
Well,
problem.
we figure since this is a sports card show, it makes sense to start with basically on collecting. When did you start collecting sports cards?
I started in the mid to late 80s. My son, who is now old, not that old, but old, when he was a little kid, he was into it, started getting into it. And then I got back into it. Obviously, I, like many other people my age, collected as a kid. I was a voracious card collector, probably from ages 7 till, I don't know, 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously life changes, so I stopped collecting. But we got back into it. What happened was we made a few trips to Cooperstown, he and I, and another friend and his son, excuse me. And we really got into it. I started doing a little research and kind of fell into the vintage stuff, and it became a love affair.
Right.
Excuse me.
And then you got addicted after that, and that the rest is history.
I did. And we'll get into that, how it evolved into the writing, especially with the first book, the T206 collection.
Yeah. So, do you have like a favorite sport, a favorite team? Like,
Oh, no. I love the Phillies. I love the Yankees.
You just touched a funny
Actually, I
thing
have
there.
my Celtics hat on tonight, but no, I'm a passionate Boston fan. I grew up 20 minutes outside of the city. Lifelong Red Sox, Pats, Bruins, Celts fan. Boston is my home, and I'm passionate about my Boston sports teams. Like, Ray, I know you are with your Phillies, and thank you, by the way, for wearing the Red Sox cap. I thought that was very funny. So yeah, I'm a Boston fan. When I was in high school, a buddy of mine and I, on Sunday afternoons, the Celtics probably 10 or 12 times a season used to play Sunday afternoon games at the Boston Garden. And we used to hop on a train. It used to cost us 75 cents to get to the Garden. And when we would walk in and pay $2 for a ticket, and we go up into the third balcony, watch the game. And I'm talking about this is when they had, at the end of Bill Russell's career, but then, evolving into Dave Cowens and all of those guys.
Right.
We'd go up for a Sunday afternoon, then hop in the train and go back home.
Right. That's cool. That's great. Well, let's get right into the first book, Mike, the T206 collection book.
Right.
Basically, is that your favorite set? I'm pretty sure that is your favorite set, and is that something that you collect?
It is. It's the first set that I really got involved in, Ray, and it's a pretty funny story how it all happened. Why we even wrote the book. As I mentioned, I was with my son in Cooperstown, and quite frankly, I was a collector, but I wasn't an avid collector. I didn't know anything about the T206 collection, not one thing. This is probably back in 1988, maybe. So we were in one of the, I don't know if you've ever been to Cooperstown, but they have all these little cool antique stores on Main Street.
It's great.
So we were in an antique store, and it was called the National Pastime. Great. It's not there anymore, but just a great store. And I was going through a trunk on the floor and just, going through cards and stuff. And I found this card. And I said to myself, wow, this would really be cool. Really be a cool card, mounted, framed on my desk in my office. Right. Excuse me, I have a little cold. So I bought the card. I think I paid $10 for the card. Brought it home. And that card sat on my desk for probably 10 years, maybe more, maybe longer. And I never knew anything about the player. So one day I'm sitting at my desk and I'm looking at the card, and I said to myself, I wonder if this guy was any good.
Mhm.
So I did a little research, and his name was Lena Blackburn.
Okay.
Now, Lena Blackburn, part of the T206 collection. I didn't know anything about him, but I started researching. Come to find out that he was an awful ball player.
Mhm.
Lousy catcher, 219 lifetime batting average, not very good. However, he made a contribution to the game that is actually still in play today.
Mhm.
He, at the time, pitchers were always complaining about the shine on the ball. It
Right.
was too shiny, too slippery. So they were trying to figure out a way to get the sheen off of the ball so pitchers could handle the ball
Right.
better, with a better grip. They tried everything, mud, all kinds of sand, but they were discoloring the ball.
Mhm.
So Blackburn played out his career, and he lived in Delaware, or just, I think, in Delaware. But
Mhm.
make a long story short, he found in the Delaware River a mud pit, and he was always experimenting. And he wound up being able to find some mud. He rubbed it on the baseball, and lo and behold, it took the sheen off
Mhm.
and did not discolor the baseball.
Right.
Started a company called the Lena Blackburn Mud Rubbing Company, and he became very rich. And every single baseball that's in a major league game today is rubbed in that concoction.
Blackburn.
Yeah. So that kind of intrigued me. So I said, wow, what a cool story. So I did a little research about the T206 collection. We started digging. Ellen was always a baseball fan.
Mhm.
So we both started digging, and the stories that we started that started unfolding, they were like amazing. The stories behind the players in the collection.
Yes, I love it.
Right.
So I said to her, I started collecting the cards. I became a T206 collector right around, I don't know, probably 1990, 1991, 92. No, actually, I'm sorry. It was probably the mid 90s.
Mhm.
Started collecting and started researching the players, and joined PSA, started getting my cards authenticated. And we were approaching the 100th anniversary of the collection. I've always been a baseball historian, did a lot of local writing up here in the Boston area, did a lot of coaching, did some newspaper stuff, columns and things like that regarding baseball. So I emailed Joe Orlando, who was president of PSA. Joe did not know me from Adam. I said, you know something? Let's give it a shot. I emailed Joe, introduced myself, and this is probably 15 years ago now, maybe 16. Introduced myself. I pitched him what I thought would be a great book with the 100th anniversary of the collection coming up. Emailed him. The next day, my phone rang. It was Joe. He says,
Wow.
hey, Tom, it's Joe Orlando. I got to tell you something. I think it's a great concept. We're interested. Let's work together. And the rest is history.
Wow.
We
That's
wound up writing the book, working really closely with Joe, obviously.
Right.
And we were fortunate, though, Ray and
Mhm.
Mike. The book, for whatever reason, the book hit a home run. The Boston papers picked up on it. We did a lot of stuff here. And I pitched the book to 15 or 20 publishers, and we got rejected by all of them. So on the first book, we put the money up ourselves, and it was quite a bit of money. We put the money up ourselves, got the book published, and so we independently published the book. And what wound up happening is we wound up winning the bronze medal
Wow.
nationally, the Ben Franklin Award,
Right.
as the bronze medal in the area of sports. From that point on, everything else took off.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's great. Well, Mike was talking to me last night about his stories with learning about, with players and so forth on the cards. It's not just, you wanted to share that, Mike, with Tom
Yeah,
about
sure.
that story?
So I've been just started working on the 51 Bowman set, and I don't have the Maze and Mantle yet. But one of the guys I picked up was Hall of Famer Billy Southworth, and I went to like Saber and Baseball Reference, and learning that this guy, you know, a lot about him. I mean, he's literally buried like 15 miles from my house.
Really?
Grew up here in this area, and it's, I got a book about him and been reading that. And then I just picked up this. It just takes you all over the place.
That's exactly what, Mike. You're
So,
dead on. That's exactly what happens. You just get caught up in
Yep.
in the whole situation in the stories. That's what
Yeah.
happened to us.
And it takes you from one card to the next. I mean, these are like these strip cards, and I've never owned one before. And this is him there. I mean, he took the field with Joe Jackson and Napoleon Lajoie, and it's just
Yeah.
it just really,
You're
awesome.
again, you're dead on. I mean, that's what happened. Like, I could name, player after player in the T206 collection. Ali Latham,
Yeah.
Good ball player, third base coach, but he was a madman when he was coaching third. He'd be running up and down the third base
Yeah.
line, screaming at players, at pitches. And because of Ali Latham, that's why they decided to create the coach's box at third base.
Right.
So those are the types of stories that we really, really, really enjoyed. Plus, we started interviewing, getting information from grandchildren, great-grandchildren of some of the players, which was really cool.
Yeah.
That's what me and Mike were talking about last night. It's not just about collecting the beauty of the cards or the value of the cards, but the story behind the players. There's a story for every player.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Orlando, Joe was the expert in actually talking about the card, the T206 set itself. I mean, Joe's an expert. Since then, we've worked at it. We've become pretty good at it too. But at the time, Joe was the guy that he really, disseminated the information.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's a classic set. I mean, I even got the posters here on my wall.
Cool. Very
I see
cool.
them there.
That's awesome, Mike.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Well, enough about me. Tom, you're the guest here. So, Ray,
Quite all right.
You want to go next?
Yeah, we were talking about the rookie card craze that's been the hype for a lot of years. When you started collecting, was there really a big rookie card hype? I don't think it really got started.
No, there really wasn't. There really wasn't, Ray. When I was a kid, rookie cards meant nothing. And
Meant
they really
nothing,
did.
right?
I mean, they really did. I mean, if you open up a pack of, at the 50, I was born in 52, so I didn't collect the 52 top series, but I had a hell of a collection of the 57, 58, 59. And, you'd open up a rookie card. It didn't mean anything to me or to anybody else. It's just another card,
Right.
I don't think that really, really kicked in probably until, I would say, the 70s.
Yeah.
Maybe late 70s. I could even be later on than that.
Right.
Where the rookie cards started really, picking up a head of steam.
Right. Yeah. And because players when people collected cards, from what I've experienced, it was about just getting the all-stars, the star players, and rookies were,
we just played scalers, man. We used to just, that's what we did. And I had Mike, he's still one of my oldest and dearest friends. We've been friends for our entire lives because we live next door to each other. He used to kick the hell out of me. God, he could flip those cards, and I became good because of him. But I'd buy a pack or two packs, and he'd wipe me out, and I'd lose all my cards.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to transition into your latest book.
Yes.
Because what are these guys doing on the front? They're playing scalers.
They're playing scalers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
That cover was a project in itself. Those two kids, I can't tell you how hard those two kids worked. We're obviously working with the publisher. We're on the East Coast, and that shot was done in California, in Southern California. So we were on the phone FaceTiming with them and the photographers for probably 7 hours. And it was the middle of the summer for those kids, and they'd be posing, and then I would say, can you ask him to move his hand just a little bit to the right or just a little bit to the left? And they really did a hell of a job. They did. Those kids were, And by the way, I don't know, do you know who Jackie Curiel is, Ray?
The name sounds very familiar.
Jackie is basically, I call her the chief of staff
Mhm.
at PSA, and those are her two kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we were able to
Right.
ask them, and they really did a nice job.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Mike, let's just get right into the books. I mean, let's go right into the
Yeah.
new book. Tom's got a new book out right now, everybody. It's called Baseball and Bubblegum, the 1952 Topps Collection. And where did the idea come from, Tom? Like, what made you decide on doing something on this, on the 52
Well, I think the
Topps?
52 mantle had a lot to do with it, with all the hype of the 52 mantle. I think that had to do with it. And then,
Sure.
talking to Joe, we talked quite a bit. And, we always toss ideas around. And he initially wanted to do something on the 33 Gaudi.
Yeah.
But I said, let's take a step back and let's really think about this. I said, the 52 Topps was really the first set of the new era.
Yep.
Replacing the Bowmans. I said, that's when, the war had ended, World War II had ended, the Korean War had ended,
Right.
economy was good.
Mm-hmm.
TV was coming into fruition.
Right.
So things were good. Kids were, collecting. I said, what do you think about the 52 Topps set? And he agreed. He says, yeah, something, you're right. Let's go with that. So
Right.
that's really why we decided to go with the 52 Topps.
Right. Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah. Like, what did you learn maybe about players or just the set by doing the book?
The thing that intrigued me, this book, this was our sixth book.
Mm-hmm.
And this book by far was the most interesting to research and the most fun to write. The reason being is, again, I'm a big advocate of the story behind the players. One was more interesting than the other.
Wow.
Obviously, it's a great collection, but once we got into the stories behind the players, it was like, wow, this is like Americana at its best. I had opened the book. The way we separated the chapters is we had Hall of Famers, we have uncommons, we have commons. We kind of separated it rather than go from Andy Pafko right through.
Right.
So my favorite chapter is the uncommons because of the stories behind the play. I'm just looking at this guy, Gene Bearden. He's a perfect example. He was a pitcher. Lifetime career of 45 and 38,
Mm-hmm.
with 3.96 earner on average. Not bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
However, here's a guy that he served on the USS Helena.
Mm-hmm.
He had a metal plate in his skull. He had a metal hinge in his knees, in both knees.
Wow.
And all he did was he endured a lifetime of pain. And he, because of the injuries that he sustained in World
Right.
War II. So what does he do? He comes back in 1948 and he goes 20-7. So, those are the types of
Yeah.
stories that I really embrace and enjoy.
Right.
The stories behind the players, because some of these guys didn't make a lot of money, as we know,
Right.
except for
Right.
the superstars. So they all work second jobs. Some of them worked in offices. Some of them were farmers. Some of them were truck drivers. Those are the stories that really intrigue me. It's amazing how many of these over 400 players were actually veterans and war heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I picked up this book to read with Carl Erkstein in it. I haven't started it yet, but just getting your book and then reading, and then it just takes you to anher book, and it's
Right.
just,
We
it's
had
just awesome.
Kyle on the show, and he was just fantastic. We had such a good time with him.
Mhm.
Rico and I spent an hour with him on the phone, and we've spoken to on the show, and then we've spoken to him. He's 94 years old, and he's still as sharp
Wow.
as a tack. So
God bless him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so many other books that we could talk about. I mean, Mike, you have the T206 book in your hands, right? You have that
Yep.
that book. There's
Yep.
I have the 100 Greatest Baseball Autographs, which is one of my favorite books. Can you tell us a little about the autograph book, Tom? Like, what were some of your
Yeah,
stories behind that?
that's a good question, Ray. That was the only book that I was really finding my way through a dark room,
Right.
because I'm not an autograph guy. I mean, I have autographs, but I was never an autograph expert.
Hmm.
And Joe and Steve Grad, pitched it, and I said, well, let's give it a shot.
Right.
Let's take a look at it. And that was really a fun book uh, to write for both Ellen and I,
Hmm.
because we weren't autograph experts. And the more we dug again, and the more we learned, it's just amazing uh, the values of some of these autographs. And not only that, but again, the stories behind the story.
Right.
Just off the top of my head, one guy real quickly, John
I
Clarkson.
was just about to ask about it.
That's like a really interesting story, and
That's a
there's
great
a
story.
backstory to it. John Clarkson pitched in the 1800s, 1880. There are only two John Clarkson autographs in existence, and none of
Right.
them can be certified. They
Right.
cannot authenticate them because there's no way to authenticate them.
Right.
However, so it's a very valuable autograph. So this is kind of an interesting story. Um, if you read the story about John Clarkson, the reason his autograph is so valuable is because the guy had a nervous breakdown.
Right.
So he was a really good pitcher, only pitched for a couple of years, but wound up in a mental institution. Is that politically correct? You call them mental institutions today?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
I think it's okay.
He wound up in a mental institution, happened to wind up at McLean Hospital in Boston, which is part of the Mass General partnership. Uh, and he lived out his years there. He was there for years and years and years. So I was thinking, I said, wow, I know that Mass General and McLean Hospital, because I'm familiar with both the hospitals. They have an archive and museum. So I contacted a friend of a friend who was the facilities director. We started talking. I said, you may be sitting on a gold mine. I gave him the story of John Clarkson, and they are going into the archives. It's long and it's tedious because they have to physically go, but they have every signature of every patient that's ever been in that hospital. So they're going through the archives. It's a museum.
Hmm.
Nothing is on a computer, so they're physically going through them. Now, because of HIPAA laws, they're not going to be able to do anything
Right.
except clearly understand that autograph. If they find the signature of him signing his hospital papers, that's $500,000. Plus they can take that signature, and PSA can go down there and authenticate the other two.
So is there any end result to that yet so far?
Still looking. As a matter of
Really?
fact, it's funny because I just spoke to him about 2 weeks ago, and they're kind of mad at me because he says this has been a real project. That's all I'm telling you.
I mean, there's a lot of great players and autographs in this book, like the Mahatma with Branch Rickey, and it really taught me a lot to see, the difference with like Comiskey with the different on the C's and
Yeah, I mean, as interestingly enough, and Steve Grab was a big part of this. As players get older, their autographs change.
yeah,
It's just like us. Our handwriting changes. There are a lot of fakes out there, though, and
Mhm.
there's some professionals out there that are very good at what they do.
Right.
I would say that 50% of the roots and 50% of the mantle autographs that are out there are probably fake.
Yeah, because
However,
there's
a
story
lot
about
of it
Joe
has
DiMaggio's.
yeah, but both of them are to blame for a lot of it.
Right.
Because they had clubhouse guys. I mean,
Clubhouse.
especially Mantle. Mantle taught one clubhouse guy how to sign, and I think it was Steve Grad,
Mhm.
or it could have been Kevin. One of the two just recently, within the last 10 years, discovered that, the guy's forgeries were so good that they just recently discovered that they were fake.
Wow.
The last 10 years, and there's
Right.
a lot of them out there. So you got to be careful with the
Yeah.
mantle and the roots, especially.
And I heard DiMaggio as well because he had
Yeah,
his sister
DiMaggio's
sign them.
pretty. Yeah, Williams are pretty. He's pretty common. Especially when he got old, because his son, he became a autograph machine because of his son.
Right.
Yep.
Mike, you had another book?
Yeah. Well, I had a quick question about autographs. So when you were a kid going to sports, like basketball, football, baseball games, were kids all just wanting autographs of just players on a baseball? Was it just on their jersey like today?
No, it
Or
was nothing. It was
nothing like that?
nothing. Yeah, it was nothing like that.
Okay.
You would ask. I mean, players were a little better. You would ask a you would ask the question, but they were pretty common. Excuse me 1 second, because I just should plug in my computer so I don't lose you guys.
Oh, okay.
My apologies.
That's all right.
Yeah.
We're back. Oh, did I lose you guys?
No,
No, we're here.
no, we're here.
For some reason I lost you, but whatever. As long as you can see me, I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hold on. That's okay. As long as you can see me, I can answer the questions.
Okay. So just about autographs and what kids wanted from players in, the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Again, that's a good question because I'm growing up as a Red Sox fan. Obviously you would try to get, I was a little kid when Ted played, but it wasn't like today. I mean, you would ask for autographs. You would ask the key players for autographs. I remember Tony C was a big part
Yeah.
of the Red Sox, and getting his autograph was kind of special. But again, just the stars we would get. My son though became an avid collector because what we would do is we happened to, I don't know how I got my hands on a book that had, and a lot of kids had these, especially when I was a kid. There was a book that was out. I don't know if it's published anymore, and it had the home addresses of every player that played the game that was still alive. So you would send him a request in a self-addressed stamped envelope
Okay.
and ask him for his autograph, and you'd get him back in the mail. My son did that for years, and he was wise enough, and I'm putting that in quotes, he was wise enough to send them to players that were in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and he got back some great autographs, from guys that had long been retired.
That's cool.
All right, Ray, you want to go to the next book?
Yeah, and another book I have here, Tom, is an All-Stars Cardboard Memories. This is about your buddy over there, your co-host, Rico. I think this is a great book. I'm in the PSA set registry for this one. I love this. I love the background of this book. It really is incredible that the diversity of Rico's career, from players that when he first started, starting with guys like Aaron and Mantle played against him or with him, and then when the end of his career, it's like George Brett and Robin Yell.
Exactly, Ray.
Really
That's why
wide.
we did the book. That's why we did the book, because Rico and I were talking one day. We're talking about his career, and I said, do you realize that you really played with two generations of great players? And he said, absolutely.
Yeah.
He started with Mantle and Mays and Robin Roberts and I don't know, Elroy Face, all of these guys.
Right.
And then he ends with Eckersley and Brett
Yeah.
and Robin Yount. I said, Rico, that is gold.
Yeah.
So, and he knew all of them. He knew all of them very well. There was a couple that he didn't know real well, but he was friends with a lot of them. So I said, hey, I have a concept for a book. Are you in? He says, yeah, I think that would be fun. We brought it to, I presented it to PSA. They loved the idea. But the fun part was doing the interview. I have, again, I can't see you guys, but I know you can see me. But in this phone right here,
Right.
I have gold. There's gold in here. However, I promised Rico it wouldn't be published till after he's gone.
Okay.
But the stories were great, and it was a fun book because he and I would not just sit at a table. You know, we would go sit in the bar and drink
Right.
and have sandwiches. And then I'd say, okay, let's talk about Willie Mays.
Right.
And I would just turn on my recorder and we would just talk about Willie Mays. I'd ask him questions, you know, and there were some great stories. Just
Oh
some
my God.
great
I can
stories.
imagine.
Oh God, some of the stuff that it was, you know, he told me some stories about like Aparicio.
Uh-huh.
You know, Louis, they moved Rico to third base so they could get Louis, and they
Right.
moved Louis to shortstop. And Louis and Rico became very good friends, and they were both practical jokers. And Yaz was a practical joker,
Mhm.
so they used to gang up on Yaz, and he'd get back at them. I mean, silly, childish stuff like, you know, setting his socks on fire.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. So it started escalating where, you know, Louis, Rico was telling me Louis was a great dresser.
Mhm.
Yaz would sneak into the clubhouse and cut his tie in half. And then Yaz, you said Yaz was famous for this. Remember the show Columbo?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Detective
Yaz
show.
used to wear like a Columbo type jacket,
Uh-huh.
you know, one of those overcoats, and
Trench coat,
everybody
yeah.
hated it on the team, but Yaz loved it. So Rico and Louis stole it one day and lit it on fire on the pitcher's mound.
Oh,
You know, stories like that, silly things but fun.
But the diversity is really incredible. I mean, you see, like I said,
Absolutely.
Yeah, Aaron, Mantle, Mays, Roberts, Ashburn, and then Dan, you know, like you said, Eckersley, Schmidt was playing at that time. Winfield,
Yeah,
it's
he
just
really,
unbelievable.
yeah, he really, and he says this, he was fortunate to just play when he played.
Right.
You know, he was young, he was 20, 23, his rookie season, or 22, and he had a good career. He had a long career, you know, 13 or 14 years, and he was fortunate. He was very fortunate.
Right.
Rico was a
Yeah,
hell of
that's
an
right.
athlete, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rico's best sport was not baseball, it was basketball.
Oh wow.
Rico was first team All City, New York City,
Wow.
senior year in basketball.
I
And
didn't know that.
he was offered scholarships to UCLA, USC, University of Maryland
Wow.
to play basketball.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, he was a great basketball player. He was a point guard.
Yeah.
That's gonna be something we'll definitely have to talk about.
I can take him
Yeah.
now, though. I know
Yeah, I
I
was
can
gonna-
take him now.
I
I
was-
said, I know I can take you now.
I was about to ask if you've ever played horse with him or one-on-one.
No, we haven't, but I know I can take him. I played high school ball, but I know I can take him. I told him that. I know I can take him.
Okay. All right. All right. The next book you did was the top 100 player bats in baseball history, the Legendary Lumbers book. So
Yeah, that was a good project. That was a project that Joe and I and Ellen and John Mallory, we talked about that at length. Joe is passionate about bats. Actually, I am too. And then we brought in John Toby from JT Sports. John was such a big help to us. And that was great. That was great. It was really fun learning about the different bats, how the bats were taped, you know, little idiosyncrasies in the bats, like little, you know, there were notches cut on them. Obviously, the valuable bats, you know, Black Betsy, the Joe Jackson bat, or the infamous pine tar bat of George Brett. Yeah, that was a cool book. That was a fun project.
Right. And I have the Cracker Jack collection book, which is written by you, Ellen, John Mallory, who's also a co-host of yours, and Jim Davis.
Correct.
This was this collection's unbelievable. I mean, would you say after the Tito 6, this has got to be the next big valuable set? Is probably
Absolutely.
that Cracker Jack.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's a fair statement.
Huge set.
That was a fun project too. I'm a big Cracker Jack fan. I don't have many Cracker Jack cards, but you know, Cracker Jack encompasses everything about our national pastime.
Right.
You know, because of obviously the song had a lot to do with it, the company, the history behind the company, and then them issuing the 1914 set and 15 set, and the differences between the two sets. But I tell you, the most intriguing thing is there's a group of collectors across the country that have an association called the Cracker Jack Collectors Association.
Okay.
Amazing. Ellen and I, actually, we went down to Philly. They flew us down to Philly, Ray,
Oh, all right.
They had their convention there. This was going back probably 9 years ago, 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And Ellen and I, we spoke at the convention.
Mhm.
They were passionate. It's just amazing the memorabilia that, that's what these people collect, the prizes that were in Cracker Jack boxes.
Right.
And they had a couple of unopened ones from 1915. Just
Wow.
great stuff. Great
Do you
stuff.
have any? Do you have any Cracker Jack cards, Tom?
I have a few. I don't have many. I probably have a half a dozen. And they're not even high grades. They're graded.
Right.
You know what I did? Like, I'm not a Cracker Jack collector, but I picked up a couple of cards when we wrote the book, just to kind of get a feel for the card and all of that good stuff.
Mhm.
And then the other thing was, and this was Joe's idea, we did issue the Babe Ruth card that never was.
Mhm.
That was Babe Ruth's rookie season.
Yeah,
And,
that's right.
Yeah, and there was no rookie card.
Right.
So they asked us, and the card, I don't know if you've ever seen the card. It just came out fantastic.
Wow.
They had PSA decided to have a Babe Ruth Cracker Jack card made,
Mhm.
and they asked us to write the narrative on the back of the card with the stats. And the stats are very unflattering because he was a
Right.
rookie. I think he won like 4 games as a pitcher, and
Right.
coming up from Baltimore. But it's kind of a cool card. It's called the Babe Ruth card that never was.
Oh, I have to check that out.
Yeah.
Definitely. Mike, did you have that?
Yeah, future plans for new books. Have any ideas? I know you mentioned the 33 Gaudi was a possibility. Anything else that kind of interests you for a few years
Well,
from now?
to be honest with you, we've pretty much decided on, just as a sidebar,
Mhm.
we really wanted this to be our last book, the
Mhm.
Okay.
52 Tops, because we have so much other stuff going on with our company and other things that we're doing. But remember when Michael Corleone said in The Godfather, as soon
Yeah.
as you get out, they pull you back in?
Pull me back in.
That's exactly what's happened to us. So the answer to your question is we've got 1, possibly 2 more projects to do, and that's going to be it. I can't tell you what they are. It is not the 33
Mhm.
Gaudi, though.
Okay.
A couple of
Okay.
people have approached us. We were really intrigued. People at PSA are really intrigued. So if we can, we're on the verge. We're about 6 months away from signing a deal because right now we're up to our eyeballs in the 52 top set.
Right, of
Right.
course.
But once that passes a little bit, we're probably going to sign a deal for a book that will not be out for 2 years, but it's
Right.
going to be a pretty exciting book. It's going to be pretty cool.
Right.
Baseball
Well,
card related.
Well, I hope something comes out. That'd be great because we've enjoyed every one of these books so far. I mean, what you guys produce is spot on
notch.
and it's great. Top
Well, we
notch, definitely.
appreciate that. It's kind of like we love doing it. It's a labor of love. We enjoy
Yes.
it, and it's fun. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. A lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Well, going into a last topic here is about basically the hobby. I mean, just your thoughts on the future of the hobby, how the hobby has changed, just the evolution of the card shows, when grading entered the hobby, just, the national, everything in general about the hobby or the state of the hobby, in your opinion.
Well, I think the hobby right now is as hot as I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think it's a result of what's going on in the world with COVID-19.
Right.
So I think that has been, it's kind of like a sweet and sour situation because the hobby has benefited from it, quite frankly. There are some things, Ray, and I'm probably going to get myself in trouble, but there's some things I am concerned about with the hobby. I am really thrilled that there's an entirely new generation of collectors that have entered this hobby in the last 2 years, 2.5 years. They're not Gen X, they're not millennials because they're a little too young, but they're the Gen X's and maybe the older millennials. And then I don't even know what the other generation is called.
Yeah.
But these are the 20 and 30 somethings, and maybe a few in their 40s that have vast amounts of disposable income,
Right.
and they are paying absolutely incredible prices for some of the modern cars that are out there.
Right.
Now that's all good. We all know some of the cars that have been sold, you know, the
Mhm.
Trout card and everything else. And I think that's a good thing. The thing that's a little concerning to me,
Mhm.
and we've talked about it, is as we get older, and I'm talking about the vintage collectors.
Mhm.
We're older than these kids.
Right.
Are the vintage cards going to diminish in both value and popularity? Now, I brought this up on many occasions, and just about everyone disagrees with me. And obviously, I'm not the real expert. I've talked to some of the great auction houses, friends of mine. I've talked to some of the big time collectors. I'm a little concerned about that.
Right.
Uh, I hope I'm wrong, but
Mhm.
I use my son
Mhm.
as a perfect example.
Mhm.
He's now 38 or 39 years old, and he and a couple of his friends, they have no interest in the vintage cars anymore.
Mhm.
In the T206s, the T205s, the Gaudis, the uh, 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 old Judge, any of those. They're
Bowman's,
really focused now on, you know, the 2018, 19, 2020, the stuff that's out now.
Right.
They're spending big money. So
Right.
again, that's a little concerning to me, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've noticed that too in the past couple months. With the modern market has just had a humongous
It's on
boom.
fire. It's on
Unbelievable.
fire. And by the way, because of that and because of COVID, there are some great deals on vintage cars out there. Great
Exactly.
deals.
Yeah. Yeah.
they
So if
really
you're a
are.
vintage collector, I highly recommend going out and
Absolutely.
picking up.
I mean, some of the prices on eBay, I'm just like, are you kidding me? I
Yeah.
mean, there's some cars that are really, really, really good prices.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong with like an Aaron rookie or a Koufax or anything like that because
Absolutely.
they're not
Yeah,
making.
you know, and we were talking about this. I think I can't remember who I was talking to on the show. I don't remember. It could have been Derek from Heritage,
Mhm.
or could have been Brian Dwyer. But interestingly, the cards that people are starting to keep an eye on are those second tier
Right.
Hall of Famers. The Eddie Matthews,
Mhm.
you know, those players, the Don
Right.
Drysdales, those players that they're starting to pick up a little head of steam.
Right. 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 That's because the top tier ones that people are, I guess, are getting a little bit priced out of the market with that.
Absolutely.
So they're
Absolutely.
going to the Brooks Robinsons and the, like you said,
Yep.
Drysdales and the second tier players. And not only that, but even on the top tier players, the high grades are just so out of price now that people are going for the 3s and the 4s and 2s, 3s and 4s right now.
Couldn't
So
agree with you more.
yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the hobby is in good shape for the future.
It's in great shape. There's
yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. And
I really do. I think it's in great shape. I'm just hoping that younger generation
yeah,
kind of develops a love for the entire hobby.
right.
You know, don't focus on, you know, just the modern cards.
Mhm.
Especially
Yeah.
since, you know, the vintage stuff, that was the foundation for which everything was built on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mike, did you have anything that you wanted?
Yeah. I'd love to know like your greatest game that you like ever attended live. It could be baseball, basketball, football, anything. Just like, wow, was it like a World Series game with the Red Sox?
Yeah. I've been to, let me think about that. 86. No, I'm sorry, not 86, 75. I was at Fenway when the Sox clinched the pennant, and that was a lot of fun. 86, I was at the game before the Buckner game. That was at Fenway. That was that we had great seats. That was a fun game. But I think probably my favorite game was I was at a Celtics Bucks game in 1970. I think it was 72. It was the finals. I think it was Game 3 when Jabbar was playing for Milwaukee. That was That was a great game. That was a great game.
Just full of Hall
But
of
the
Famers.
best, the group,
Yeah.
undoubtedly, the greatest game that I ever watched was on TV, and that was in 2004 when the Red Sox won the World Series. Because
Right.
you guys, it's hard for people to understand after 86 years of misery.
Yeah.
You know, that day was absolutely incredible. And I'll tell you what, my dad, God rest his soul, he was a rabid Red Sox fan, and he passed away in 1996. And he said to me, that's one of my biggest regrets, was that I never saw the Red Sox win a championship. Just when he was old. And the day after they won the World Series, I drove into Boston, drove to the Yawkey Way store. I bought a World Series pennant, drove to the cemetery and stuck it in his grave. But it was amazing how many pennants were on graves all over the cemetery.
They beat you to it.
It was really, really impressive that a lot of people did that. And then the other thing that sticks out for you before we end it is the Buckner game. My kids were all very small, and I was watching the game. I'll never forget this as long as I live, because the Red Sox were going to win it. I mean, there was no way they weren't going to win the World Series finally. And I was at the time, I was a school teacher, and I went out and bought a $15 bottle of champagne, which was a lot of money to me at the time. And I'll never forget this. I remember my wife was upstairs. She had no interest at the time. And the kids were all in either cribs or sleeping. And I'm sitting there watching the game. And I'll never forget this. I grab my champagne bottle. I pop it open. I have my glass, right? I'm standing in front of the TV. I pour the champagne into the glass.
Oh, God.
The ball goes through Buckner's legs. Listen, I look at the TV, and I actually smile. I shake my head, I smile, I walk to the sink, empty the whole bottle of champagne in the glass into the sink.
You and everybody else that same night.
Absolutely. True story. True story.
Oh, my God.
No.
Well, yeah, my first baseball game I ever watched on TV was Game 6 of the '75 World Series. Carlton Fisk's homer.
That was a great game. Rico, obviously Rico was in the dugout when that all happened. And I got to tell you something. You know, you grew up. It's amazing how life has its little twists and turn. Growing up as a kid. Now, when Rico in '67, I was a sophomore in high school, and I got to tell you. And Rico knows this, and he just shakes his head. My father and Ray, I know you're Italian. We're very proud Italians.
Right.
And Rico Petrocelli and Frank Malzone were my father's idols.
Right.
And as a high school kid, Rico Petrocelli and Kyle Yastrzemski were my idols. And it's, you think back and then you fast forward. I've known Rico now for years, and it's just amazing that he's a guy that was actually my idol growing up as a kid.
Right.
Now he's my partner.
Right.
I bust his chops about that all the time, all the time. But
that's great. That's just perfect. I mean, yeah, we enjoy the show. I mean, one last thing, Tom, why don't you share with the people that they're watching how they not only can they watch the show on Facebook, is it on anywhere in the radio in the New England area?
Yes, it is. We broadcast on WCAP up in the greater Boston area.
Okay.
It's 980 AM, but they have a pretty strong signal that goes from downtown Boston up to Concord, New Hampshire. They broadcast though, they tape the show, and because they're also the radio station for the Red Sox single A affiliate, the Spinners. So they broadcast our show after the Spinners game ends, which is kind of fun.
Right.
But we're also obviously we're on many, many, many different Facebook pages, but our platform is either the PSA Facebook page or the Sports Collectors Daily Facebook page, or the Great American Collectibles Facebook page.
Right.
But everybody shares it. A lot of people, all the different groups share it.
Right.
That's what we do.
And that's
Awesome.
on Wednesday nights, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time, right?
Correct.
Mhm.
6:30 to 7:30 every Wednesday. We enjoy it. Yeah, if you'd like to buy the book, feel free and go to Amazon.
Right.
Baseball and Bubblegum, available right on Amazon. Or else you can go to tomzappalamedia.com. Either one.
TomZappalaMedia.com. You heard it here.
Yep.
Well, Tom, we really appreciate you being on. It was an honor and a privilege from my Paisan Italian
Yeah.
friend in Boston up there. Make sure you tell Rico we would love to have him on.
Well, yeah, I mean, Rico will come on, I promise you. And if you're ever
Okay.
in the Boston area, Ray, make sure you look us up. Make sure
Oh,
you bring one of those.
absolutely.
I got to tell you something. Those Philly cheesesteaks, those things are so overrated. It is ridiculous. Ridiculous. It's a piece of meat with some cheese on it. I mean, are you kidding me? It's
No
ridiculous.
comment because I have too many people here. My family will kill me.
You got to come up to Boston, man. Have
Yeah.
yourself a really good Italian sausage sandwich
Oh, up there.
or some of Regina's pizza. That's what you want.
Oh, that's what I'm there for. Well, you also have another show called The Sicilian Corner.
I
That's
do.
on Fridays at is that 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Eastern
11,
time?
11 to 12. We've been on the air for 20 years. This is our 20th year.
And I enjoy that. While I'm sitting at work during the day, I'm working from home right now, and I put that on. I listen to it. It's
We
great.
call it, people refer to it as the Italian version of Seinfeld. In Italian, it's a show about nothing, but people seem to love it. So
Well, that's great. Tom, I really appreciate it. Me and Mike,
My
from the
pleasure.
bottom of our hearts, we
Excellent.
really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much.
and good luck with the
And,
podcast, guys. I wish you
thank you
guys the
very
best,
much.
and any help you need, just let us know.
Thanks again. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Sports Car Talk episode number 10. Stay tuned for more episodes. Have a great night.
Take care,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.